Hi, everybody. I'm George, and this is the best little horror house in Philly, the show where we talk about the best horror movie ever made, according to our guest, at least. And today's guest is a pal of mine and one of the hosts of the new podcast, the Weekly Podcast Massacre. Greg Anderson is here. Hey, bud.
Hello, George. How are you?
I'm doing splendid. Very excited to talk about today's movie. This is a big one for us and appropriate considering the last movie that I talked about.
The timing on that worked out pretty great. Kind of two off kilter of the Dead movies. They fit nicely together. Yeah.
But before we get into that, why don't we talk about where your love of horror comes from and how it all started for you?
Sure. Yeah. I was on your Friday the 13th Part 2 episode, and I talked about it a little there, but I was not a horror movie fan growing up until I was about 10 or 11 or so. And the closest I got to loving horror or being able to even watch horror without covering my eyes or hiding behind a blanket or finding excuses to leave the room and all that stuff as you do as a kid to escape scary parts in movies. The only thing I was able to watch was Army of Darkness because of the comedy element. It was funny enough to kind of mask over the scary parts that I still was timid about every time they came up. But, you knew there was a joke coming a couple minutes later, so it was okay. And so I watched the original Evil Dead and I was about 11 expecting that level of comedy and that level of accessibility. And it haunted me for years and years afterwards. But it opened up a whole new world of movies after that because that was so intense to me. Anything I saw after that felt like, tame by comparison.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And I still have a special place in my heart for Evil Dead. But I very quickly after that discovered this movie. And this has been, I think, my favorite ever since.
And I assume you eventually got to Evil Dead 2, which is
I
kind of in the middle there.
Yeah, I watched it in pretty quick succession, and that one was a lot more easy to take down and digest. Yeah. I still get a little timid every time I put on the original Evil Dead. I still remember that feeling of first discovering, okay, wait a minute, this isn't going to be a comedy. This is like, you're going to actually see pencils go into ankles and things like that. Yeah, it rocked my world.
I can believe it.
Yeah, I didn't feel that way with a horror movie again until I saw today's movie.
So I do want to talk about your show a little bit, which I have been very much enjoying. I know right now you guys are doing a themed month, Killer Objects. Are y'all going to keep doing themed months, or like what's sort of the plan with that? Yeah,
so we are going to be doing theme months still going forward. And I'll give a little hint that coming up in August, we have a nice little punned theme we have a Simulation August, or I guess an alliterative, not really a pun, but yeah. So we're starting
certainly a play on words at the very least.
Yeah, there's some wit to it if you think about it. Absolutely. So we're starting off with the 1970s Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Wow, a great one.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. We have some really good ones planned coming up. I'm trying to push a couple of ideas of my co-hosts. A lot more pun titles coming up for themes. Yeah.
Well, that's right on my alley. So, and yeah, I mean, the show is great. I've been listening. I love the Christine episode in particular. That's a movie that has a very close place in my heart. And you guys you're not just covering the big names, which I can always appreciate. You did Microwave Massacre, you did Slacks, which is a pretty new movie as well. A lot of fun stuff. So
we try to have a wide range. And then our upcoming episode, which we announced on the Slacks episode, is a Dutch film, The Lift, by one of my favorite directors, Dick Moss.
Wow.
Who has been a real good, he's been a real fun, horror find lately. And if you like dig into his movies, there's a lot of great stuff in there.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely be checking that out when I watch it for the podcast. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your favorite subgenre as well? Because it seems like there is a comedy through line between the big ones that you named.
Before my obsession with horror began, when I was about, was like a preteen and early teen, my obsession was comedy. And so, I mean, that was the natural in for me was horror comedies. And yeah, I would say in a broader sense, that is my favorite subgenre, but also because Evil Dead has an early kind of zombie element. And growing up, I mean, I was not a fan of horror movies, but I was definitely into horror video games, or at least watching my brother play horror video games. So I was a big Resident Evil fan growing up. So zombies have always held a special place as well. Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. And I mean, we've already said what movie we're talking about today, which is Return of the Living Dead. But this is a movie that has come up in a lot of other episodes because, first of all, everyone loves this movie because it's fucking great. But also it's a very interesting movie in terms of how it is broken off of the Night of the Living Dead. It also exists in part of the Murderer's Row that is 1985 cinema. And indeed part of the zombie crown jewels, the watershed moment where zombies first developed the taste for brains. Like, this movie has so much going on, not just in the context, but in terms of how it actually executes it, that it's really remarkable, even if it wasn't like funny and good looking and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. It would be interesting for so many other reasons, but it's interesting for all these reasons. Yeah. And it also, I think it came out sandwiched between Reanimator and Day of the Dead in that same year. Like, I think Day of the Dead came out a month after this. I have to imagine a little bit, because this was popular and well reviewed at the time, that it kind of like took some of the steam out of Day of the Dead's release and critical reception, because you have this movie that is such a send up of the traditional Romero style zombies.
Right.
And then you have a Romero movie dropping a month later. And I have to imagine it took some of the wind out of its sails.
Yeah, especially because that is a particularly bleak installment of the Romero movies. And, this certainly has a nihilistic quality of its own, but because it has the comedy to sort of cut that a little bit, it makes it a little more palatable than just the constant dourness of Day of the Dead, which I do love. I have to say. You just
distilled right there why I think this is like a perfect horror movie, because it is so nihilistic and so funny in the same breath.
Yeah.
And Day of the Dead has like some slight comedic moments in it, and there is some pretty good comedy there to cut that like really thick tension, but it's not doing it just back to back like Return of the Living Dead is, where you have something that is so at once funny, and then the more you think about it, it's also intensely disturbing and bleak, and you don't even notice because of the comedy.
Yeah, it's not until the very last scene where you're like, oh, wow, this is really kind of like, it makes sense. This is what it's been leading us to, but it is quite shocking. So we talked in the previous episode about when we were talking about the Night of the Living Dead remake, the way that the copyright for George Romero's 1968 version was left off and it entered the public domain. I'm not going to rehash the entirety of how that shook out, but George had co-written this with John Russo. And when they went their separate ways after Night, they parted pretty amicably, with Russo retaining the Living Dead portion of the title specifically, while Romero was going to make his own line of sequels with blackjack and hookers and the of the dead aspect of the name.
What a strange thing to negotiate for, like to think, I really want that Living Dead part.
Hey, man, that was the secret sauce as far as Russo was concerned.
I mean, I do love that portion of the title. It really does add a lot to it. Yeah.
It's very evocative. You understand that it's very much about like the reanimation of these zombies and not just like, Day of the Dead could be a million things, but this Return of the Living Dead, you know exactly what you're in for right away. Yeah,
definitely. And I think the movie, I mean, not to like jump into this first scene, but that movie kind of knows it too. When you have that title card come up with the music playing, it's so confident. Mm-hmm. It's like, we know how kind of badass this is, this whole aesthetic and this style.
Absolutely. But so John wrote Return of the Living Dead as a book, and then they were going to have Tobe Hooper direct it. Now, this is a really interesting choice. I do think that it would have worked. I think that Tobe Hooper does have the comedy chops to pull this off, along with obviously the darker moments. There's a lot of comedy in Poltergeist. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is very funny. And I think
the entire reason for, I think, swinging so hard at the comedy in Texas Chainsaw 2 is people saying, or he was saying that people didn't understand the comedy of the first film. He intended that to be a comedy.
Right. And I think that is what's interesting, is that he not only has the comedy chops, but in the original Texas Chainsaw, I think it is doing an admirable job of finding that similar balance to this, where I think always of the moment where Leatherface comes out and it's like the third person in the house and he just like throws up his hands like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah. I mean, it's similar to this. It's like, like in the same shot, it's at once relatable, scary, disturbing, sad. Like there's a lot you can take from that moment based on how like Hooper like frames him, and you see the panic in his face and his eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's and it's also still scary. He still just murdered somebody. So
yes, absolutely. Now, Dan O'Bannon of Alien fame came in to give the script a once over, polish it up. And while he's talking to Toby, he says, "Hey, man, check out the script that I wrote." And what do you know? Suddenly, Toby has backed out of Return of the Living Dead to direct Life Force, which is a pretty fun movie about space vampires.
I still need to see that one. There's a lot of early Hooper I'm still missing, so that one's on my list for sure.
I mean, look, it's no Return of the Living Dead. I'll tell you that for free.
What is,
So true. So true. When you set the bar that high, you're really setting yourself up for failure. But now they have no director. And so the studio is like, well, what about you, Dan? And he says, hell yeah, I want to do this, but only if I can take another pass at the script, really make it different from Romero's. Like you said, more of a send up of it, kind of a pastiche, using it as a springboard to create their own thing.
Yeah, it's such a different way to approach a story, and it's meta in a way that few things are. It exists in a very strange place where it at once like acknowledges that there is a movie that exists, but we're not following that movie's rules. But that movie did have some things right and some things wrong, and it becomes the only basis for like their knowledge of what's happening is this movie, and it's not accurate. Yeah,
I love that. That they're like, oh yeah, you know how when they adapt a real story for the screen, things get changed. That's what happened here. And you're like, great, I get it. I'm in.
It's like trying to negotiate like a hostage negotiation, only knowing like action movies, Yeah. Like you just think, okay, that's how how Arnold does it is how the real world works. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I also saw a lovely quote that said he'd never felt so fulfilled as when he finally got to direct his first big film. I thought that was wonderful.
In preparation for this, I rewatched the movie with his commentary on, and you can tell just how much of a film lover he is. I mean, a lot of these guys of this generation, him and John Carpenter and all the other guys he kind of worked with tangentially, like George Lucas, like they all grew up as just massive film nerds,
right?
Who are now getting a chance to kind of make the movies they always wanted to make as kids. And you can still feel that kid's excitement in their movies. And especially with Dan O'Bannon talking about this, where he was got to be different and express himself. And, he really fought to do what he wanted. You can, I feel that excitement and love of movies in this, it's clear that he's very excited to be working on, and be directing his first feature. Yeah.
Yeah. And knocked it out of the park as far as I'm concerned. So good job, Dan. The design of the movie was done by William Stout, his very first, although he'd been doing storyboard work for movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark. And he went on to do Conan the Barbarian's production design as well, which that's a well-designed movie for sure.
They are two of my top 5 movies of all time, particularly because of the production design. This is very much like a production designer's movie. Like you can feel it in the frames when you look at the level of detail, these sets. And especially when you learn about the constraints, the time constraints that we're under and the low budget of this movie, what they have managed to accomplish with so little time is truly remarkable.
Yeah. And I also really like how when he was looking for inspiration in terms of how they were going to look, he went to the Welsh legend of the Bog People, which, first of all, great name. Second of all, I think that it really works because they look very different from the Romero zombies, but still in that kind of like falling apart way. Tarman in particular is very visceral and gross and slimy, which is very much not the case of the original Romero zombies.
Yeah.
It's just, it looks great. And I think that as much as there is that excitement and joy that Dan O'Bannon is bringing, I think that without William Stout's work, there's no way that this movie is as successful in execution as it is today.
Oh, definitely. I mean, you see some of it in the movie a little bit because I think they had a partway through production had to fire their visual effects artist and hire a new one with only like 3 weeks left in the shoot.
Right.
And so you can kind of see a little bit in the movie, there's like leftover shots of a lot of the effects that they ended up replacing later that didn't work, particularly the headless yellow zombie. Mm-hmm. If you've like seen the production stills of the old one, it is like a dude in a yellow sweater, like pulled up over his head. It's so cheap looking. So you look at the idea of like what this movie could have been. It could have been so much cheaper and so much cheesier with the budget it had. But William Stout was able to execute O'Bannon's vision perfectly with so little.
And it's so funny that is the first zombie. So like, when you see like the arm fall off and it looks like shit and you're just like, oh no.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it, what came after this movie, but I mean, you see that in Return of the Living Dead too. Like that is very much what this movie could have been without the level of like care and craft that William Stout brought to it.
Yes, absolutely. He also, one of the other big influences on the look of it was the classic EC Comics, which you can hear all about on the Patreon. The cast here is wonderful as well. We get Clu Gallagher as Bert doing like a Jimmy Stewart impression that I'm totally on board for.
Oh yeah, he plays a great like tough guy in this.
Yeah. You get James Karen as Frank and Don Calfra as Eddie, found in Mulholland Drive as Wally, and the principal in Twin Peaks, respectively. So
yeah,
that's fun. A little David Lynch connection.
I know, I love it, and you best believe I was I was coming in with that fact ready to go. You beat me to it.
I also, of course, love the names being Bert and Ernie. That's a fun little thing.
Supposedly unintentional, but they just work really well together, though.
That's the kind of thing where I like believe it was unintentional, but then they noticed and they were like, well, we're going to leave it in, of course.
Exactly. Yeah. They just didn't want to take credit for it. Yeah,
exactly. There's also a Friday the 13th franchise through line with Michael Nunez Jr. as Spider and Tom Matthews as Freddy from Friday 5 and 6, respectively.
Yes. Oh, and Mark Venturini from Friday 5.
Really? I don't think I even realized he was in there.
He's the one who acts as Joey. He plays Vic.
Oh my God, he totally is.
Yeah. He sadly passed away fairly early, I think, or fairly soon after Friday 5 was released.
Wow.
But based on those two roles, I mean, I'm a big fan.
Who knows what could have happened? Yeah. I mean, hey, he kills it. Pun intended.
Yeah. So, I mean, that factors into Friday. I have a special love for Friday 5 as well. And part of it is the Return of the Living Dead connection with those actors.
Sure. Hey, what better reason?
Yeah.
And, like you said, this movie was very rushed and it had a very low budget, only around $4 million, which is not a lot, especially for something as special effects heavy as a zombie movie.
Yeah.
And especially a zombie movie that is like, it's not just like in a farmhouse the way that the original one was. This is very specific sets that are constructed for this movie with all kinds of fun names and fires and stuff needed. So
yeah, they talk about this a little bit on the commentary I watched was with O'Bannon and William Stout, and how basically they worked entirely in this one warehouse in Burbank, and every set was built inside. It was also their production offices. It was their like storage. It was, is where they went and took lunch breaks and everything. So everything was shot in this one warehouse and kind of sectioned off into like, okay, this is our crematorium. This is our warehouse. This is our office, and it, I think that kind of gives it this really interesting, almost like live theater feel where you can kind of tell that all these are constructed sets, but they are also very convincingly constructed sets.
Yeah. I think that the fact also that makes me feel like it has a theatrical quality to it is that even though it is multiple locations, they are all within a very tight area. Yeah. And so there's a lot of running back and forth between the sets, but there's only a few to keep going back between, which I like. They keep it fresh by having a few, and they're never in one spot for too long, but it gives you that variety without feeling like a bottle episode.
Exactly. And you also have the kind of two different groups of characters you're following too. So it's kind of a large cast, but also very limited cast.
Right. Because even the second group splits as well.
Yes. And so you get a lot of variations of these people in the crematorium, these people in the warehouse, these people grouped together. It's kind of exciting when certain characters link up at certain times.
Yeah. When they finally meet up, you're like, holy shit, this is really happening. And it made $14.25 million on that $4 million budget. So I'll call that a success for sure. And even old Raj gave it 3 stars out of 4, decrying it as made from the usual ingredients. But he did say that they were doing it with style.
I love that he liked it, but the usual, what is he talking about? The usual ingredients. What's usual about this?
Zombies exist in it, I guess. I don't know. Raj, I don't know what you're up to, man.
You just can't pay horror a straight compliment. That's it.
I think that is genuinely it. But to get into the actual movie, you already kind of talked about this opening title card, which I love. I think that this is, as you say, an extremely confident move, real heater to come out of the gate with the events portrayed in this film are all true. The names are real names of real people and real organizations.
I love it. I love the audacity to even try to claim that it's true, and then to not go the route of like, oh, but we've changed the names and things. But no, these are the actual names. So we're lying, but we're also lying about lying. Like it's yeah.
Yeah, you could go to Louisville today and see the gravestones of Freddie and Frank. But so we open up with You Need a Medical Supply. First of all-time great fake company name, as far as I'm concerned, up there with Acme.
Yes, absolutely.
You need it, we got it. None larger. You Need a Medical Supply. They're also our sponsor today.
A subsidiary of Unita.
It's July 3rd, 1984, day before 4th of July weekend, 5:30 Eastern. Frank and Freddie are saying goodbye to Bert, who owns You Need a Medical Supply. And Frank is going to show Freddie the ropes at this supply store because he was just hired to work in the warehouse. He makes a joke about the skeleton farm in India, but this reminded me that there was actually like that huge thing with the bodies exhibit where it turned out that the cadavers were traced to a Russian medical examiner who was convicted of illegally selling the bodies of homeless people, prisoners, and indigent hospital patients. Like, good Lord.
Yeah. I don't want to be rehashing the commentary this entire time, but O'Bannon talks about where this came from. And it is a similar thing where he kind of name dropped a little bit. And he's like, oh, when I was working on Alien with H.R. Giger, like he had ordered some human skulls to use as like reference for his drawings when he was designing the xenomorph. And O'Bannon described how he like took a bone saw and like cut him to pieces and like positioned them certain ways and stuff. But he noticed how all the skulls had perfect teeth, which is a line in this movie too about, you know, how many people do you know with perfect teeth? And so how do you get so many for like medical schools and things like that? And they joke about a skeleton farm in India. And this is like also a thing that Toby Hooper once joked about with O'Bannon. That's where it came from. So I think there might be a skeleton farm in India. And O'Bannon laughed and then kind of thought about it for a second. It's like, oh, like, that's not a good thing. That's horrible.
Yeah. During the process of showing Freddie the ropes, he also shows him a freezer with a fresh corpse in it. He says there's usually even more, but things are slow because of the holiday weekend. And I think it is very funny to leave this room with, hey, look alive.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, there's so many great dead puns like that. Look alive. The phone's dead. It's dead. Just like it's constant throughout. I also love here. He says that the bodies they're used for like weapons training by the military.
Right.
So this body is eventually going to be taken to shipped off and like shot at or blown up.
Wow. It's not a very dignified life for a corpse.
No. And I think that's a big part of this movie, honestly, is how we do like view and treat our dead though. Right.
Yeah. So, yeah. Cut to punks, a variety of punks, one of each type. You get Spider in a military look, a preppy girl named Tina, a biker chick named Trash, who is Leanna Quigley, famous from such movies as Silent Night, Deadly Night, and Sorority Babes in the Slimeball Bolorama. Both very fun movies as well. A Devo guy named Chuck, Travis Bickle Light named Scuzz, and then I guess like traditional 80s punk Casey. She says, fuck off and die. It's fun.
It's great. Yeah, they're all wonderful. They all have their little catchphrases and memorable lines. Like I seriously don't think there's a wasted line of dialogue in this that hasn't become like, you know, like a thing you can yell out and get recognized instantly.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they're very fun. It's great to me that there are all these different like types of punks, because if it was just like a mass of the same kind of person, then they become a unit, you know, then it's just the group. But by making them all distinguishable from each other, it's much more identifiable to have individuals there.
Yes.
You know, you have Trash instead of one of the punks. You have Spider instead of one of the punks. I think it's a really smart move, and it adds a lot of visual flair as well. It's just really good filmmaking.
And they also feel like different stereotypes than your typical like slasher teens.
Yeah.
They feel unique in that way. And they also, when they kind of fight with each other, I think we talked about this a little bit in our Friday the 13th episode, but when you believe that they're friends, there's a certain magic to it. But in this case, I weirdly believe that they're like frenemies with like suicide. They straight up say, well, you only hang out with you because you drive us around.
Yeah. He's got
it actually answers that horror movie question of like, why would these people hang out together if they don't like each other? And they straight up tell you, well, yeah, we use you for rides.
There you go. He's not happy about it.
Yeah, they have that believability, and like they're just a bunch of people who kind of maybe don't really like each other all the time, but they all want to drink and party together. So they know they can find that with these people, even if they're not the best people.
They're going to go pick Freddie up because he's Tina's boyfriend, and he always knows where there's a place to party, they say. Great guy to know. You got to know one of those guys. That's my buddy Craig. He's our guy who always knows where there's a place to party.
Freddie's essential. Absolutely.
Yes. And Freddie asks Frank what the weirdest thing he ever saw was. And Frank asks if he knows that Night of the Living Dead was based on a real case. And so this is where it starts getting really interesting. And they start kind of folding in the lore of Night of the Living Dead, but really only to like kind of look at it from like a distant area to be like, you know, that movie similar, but not the same.
We're starting at the same place, Dead Rising. From there, it's all different.
Exactly.
Yeah. This is legitimately my favorite film monologue of all time. I love James Cameron's read of this and his performance. It's so well timed out and planned. You can find out, like, just, you know, reading behind the scenes stuff, that like James Cameron and Tom Matthews really got along and rehearsed together and like really kind of like had this genuine connection with each other on set.
Yeah.
And it really shows here. Their timing is wonderful.
Very visible.
And like, yeah, you can really feel that like Tom Matthews is invested in this story. And it's like genuinely chilling, you know, with his little like the flavor he adds to it is so great. His facial expressions and his mannerisms, the fact that he like accepts a call from his wife in the middle of it.
I also love that it's so, he sees that it's working and like leans into it. He's like, yes, this is doing exactly what I want. Like, absolutely. He's totally buying it, hook, line, and sinker. I say buying it, but it is true. So I mean, I don't know how much it's buying it so much as being engaged with the story.
Definitely. And it has one of my little favorite lines of dialogue at that, where he's just like, you know, explaining it away. How do these end up here? He literally waves his hand and says, "Typical government fuck up." And it's like, oh yeah, we all know the government sucks at doing their job. Yeah.
That's so funny to me too, because that to me is like the most connection that it shares with the Romero ones.
Yes, definitely. It has that anti-government, anti-establishment bent like in its bones. Yes, for sure.
And so basically Frank explains that a medical spill leaked into the morgue and made the dead rise up at a VA hospital in Pittsburgh is what the actual story was. And that they threatened to sue George Romero. So he changed the story. And that's why we got the movie we got, which again, you know, to me, very fun, very meta to talk about like the way that filmmaking happens and adapting stories. I just think it's great.
I love the thought that like George Romero should make like a documentary and then it turned into Night of the Living Dead.
Well, he did make documentaries too, which is part of what I love. Oh man, there's a lot going on here, folks.
Yeah, it's great. And you have to it really makes me wonder too, like I've never really heard Romero talk about this movie or what he thinks of it really, but like, did he appreciate like the shout out? Did he see this as a jab at him, or is it like a loving kind of tribute? Because it's not really like, it's not really making fun of Romero's style. It's just using it in such a clever way as like a joke almost of like, okay, we all know how this is going to go. This is going to be like a Romero movie because it's based on the same events. So yeah, I'm very curious what he thought of this.
Well, I did actually look into it a little bit, and I saw mostly stuff that was like he was constantly having to tell people that he didn't make the eating brains thing. And so, you know, I think it's great that he was trying to give credit where it was due and say like, look, this is its own great thing. It has its own indelible mark on the zombie horror subgenre. I mean, I feel like if he did dislike it, we would have heard a lot more about it.
That's fair. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I hope he liked it at the very least. He had a good head screwed on there. Old George.
Yeah, definitely. I could see there being a little resentment for being like, no, I'm not the brains guy, having to say that constantly.
Yeah.
People coming up to him and trying to do zombie impressions and saying brains and getting it wrong.
Yeah. They go up to him like, I'm Tar Man.
Yeah.
He's like, what the fuck are you talking about? But yeah. Due to a classic army fuck up, the bodies got shipped there instead of Darrow Chemicals. So they head down to the basement to check it out. 14 years later, still there in these metal shipping containers. And you can just look right through the people. Very generous of them to design these tankers this way.
We kind of learned that the corpse inside might still be conscious. So maybe it's for his benefit. Maybe it's, to give him a view. Right?
So true. I also love that after this guy has been shit talking the army for literally that entire monologue.
Yeah.
When Freddie asks him if it'll leak, he's like, hell no, this was made by the Army Corps of Engineers.
Another great little jab at the military and the establishment. Yeah.
Right. Of course, as soon as he slaps the side, it starts leaking vigorously. This is also when the flesh starts regenerating and the title card comes up. I love a good delayed title card. This is about 9 minutes into the movie. Not too shabby.
Yeah. You kind of forget you haven't seen it yet. And so when it like pops up, it's a real statement. And this font I learned from the William Stout commentary was based on Ralph Steadman's font and his drawings and stuff for Hunter S. Thompson. Is kind of where this font comes from.
I see that.
And it's like the aesthetic of the whole movie almost kind of has this like sort of cartoonist, underground comics feel to it. So it's very fitting.
Yeah, totally. Especially, I mean, like the poster itself as well. Like we never really see a zombie that looks exactly like that, but it is, or like either of the ones on the cover, but it's great. It's got a real look to it that is all its own. Yeah. And I think that's hugely important because zombie movies in particular tend to be a little, I don't know. I don't even know how to describe it, but they're saturated, we'll say. Yeah. It's a saturated market. And so doing something like that to really distinguish yourself is huge in terms of memorability.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also kind of fits in with like this movie's status as like a punk movie where it literally is just being different to be different. Yeah. It's like you can't get much more punk than that. Just being like, well, I'm only doing this because it's the opposite of what everyone else is doing.
So true. So true. The corpse in the freezer also starts wriggling to life as the air from the contaminated barrels sprays out all over it. It's now going through the pipes. A great signifier that this is not just going to affect the corpses that were in the barrels. It's a nice way of just being like, look, this is what's going to happen.
Yeah, this is where it first starts to like make things a little like different too. Is when you start to see exactly like what comes to life, and it's literally anything that was once alive, and then you kind of get the sense of there's different rules as to what gets animated and how you kill these things. So it's a great first reveal of like, okay, things are a little different here.
Yeah, we then check in with the army guy out on the Pacific coast. He's having a miserable day as usual. Although I could get down with pork chops twice in one day. I don't know what he's complaining about.
Yeah, that's a pretty fancy lifestyle, man.
But yeah, it's a way to just be like, look, he's out there. He's ready. They're waiting for a phone call. Should something show up?
I think that little scene just has a great, I mean, again, there's no wasted moment in this. It is just like a weird kind of expository scene of a setting up. Like, okay, they're kind of expecting something to happen. The military is going to get involved at some point. Right. But even within that, we have these jokes about how this guy is just a miserable fuck who yells at his wife for no reason. Right. And she has a great like upper crust stuffy. I love her reaction when she hears the pork chop bite and just kind of staring off into the distance. Yeah. It's not the first time this has happened.
Yeah. Yeah, it is great. And I brushed over the scene, but like you say, this whole movie is very funny. There's lots of great jokes happening all the time. And if I listed every great joke, we would just be reading the movie. And so
O'Bannon this is the last time I'll mention this commentary.
No, hey man, I didn't get a chance to watch it, so this is perfect. You're bringing
talks about this style of humor. He and William Stout were both really big fans of Mad Magazine, and Stout had worked with his name is Harvey Kurtzman, who was a Mad Magazine artist, and he had this style of humor that they put in every drawing and every kind of illustration. They call them eyeball kicks, but they're essentially just minute details crammed into every available space in the frame of your cartoon. Wow. So it's like you open up a Mad Magazine and you look here and there's something being satirized every couple of centimeters, or every couple of millimeters. And so that's kind of how they approach the design of this movie too. So when you look at the office, it's just covered in different naked photos in the background, jokes with like the Bert as a slave driver vision test thing. And when you look into the mortuary, there's all the Nazi stuff. This movie is just filled with jokes and satire, every couple of feet, basically. Yes,
that definitely comes through. 30 minutes later, the punks are riding along with Suicide, a spooky motherfucker they only call when they need a ride. That's how they describe him. And he is spooky, but they go.
He's genuinely threatening. Yeah,
he's got like the big is it a lip ring or a nose ring? It's something that's going across his whole cheek.
It looks heavy. Yeah, it
Does look heavy.
Comfortable. Yeah.
But they're going to use him to go pick up Freddy, and they decide that they're going to kill time until his shift is done by just fucking around in the graveyard across the street.
As you do. Yeah.
As you do. Been there before. In my old apartment, there actually was a historical cemetery very close by. And so I would walk around that cemetery very frequently. And one time I found a headstone that said George H on it. And I never found that gravestone again. I do have a picture of it, so I know it existed at one point, but I was never able to find it.
This is like some Fatal Frame stuff. I think it only exists in that picture or something.
So
it's like a Back to the Future photo. That's.
I've actually been dead the whole time.
Yeah.
But back at UNITA, Freddie and Frank, they wake up having been knocked out by this gas, and they discover chaos. Everything is reanimated, including the previously mentioned cadaver, the split in half dogs, even the pinned butterflies are flapping their wings on the board there.
That's a great example of an eyeball kick, which is a phrase. Since I heard it the other day, I've been using it constantly.
It's a good one.
Yeah, it describes so much of the comedy I love too. But those butterflies are never really acknowledged. They're there in the foreground, but the characters never notice that. It's just this little detail to add to it. Like, oh yeah, there's also zombie butterflies on the wall
the real menace
the entire time. Yeah.
I also love that they discuss what to do and settle on call the boss.
Yes. Yeah. This is a start too of like the whole anti-capitalist view of this movie as well, where it's all becoming like, okay, well, how can we save the face of our business?
Right.
It's never about how do we save lives or how do we not get eaten. It's just how do we remain profitable after this?
Right. Exactly. What is this going to do for my company down the road? Back at the cemetery, Trash is smoking with Snake and starts fantasizing about with Spider. Excuse me.
There you go.
She's smoking with Spider.
Snake was cut out of the movie.
She starts fantasizing about the worst ways to die. And for her, it's a bunch of old men getting around her and eating her alive, which the deliberate over specificity is just like the funniest thing in this movie to me.
Absolutely. And it's funny that you say that because O'Bannon has talked about how he, with the younger cast members in this, he really had them rehearse this like a live production. They rehearsed for like a week, which is not something you don't normally get that long of rehearsal for movies.
Right.
And so they really had the timing down in their lines. And he was very specific about which lines and words he wanted them to enunciate. Because of the way he mixed the sound, all the songs to be higher to intentionally drown out some of the dialogue.
Yeah.
He has them hit these certain words very hard so you can hear it over the music.
Yeah, it works really well. It is funny too, because when you watch with subtitles, those lines are still there. So you get like a few jokes here and there that you didn't even know about. And it's fun, but I do like having the music be so in the foreground of this movie as well. Again, very punk. Again, very kind of doing its own thing, kind of being like, this is just how we're doing it. We're going to really slam you with this music. It's going to be a huge part of it.
Yeah. And I mentioned earlier about O'Bannon being part of the same, he's sort of the same generation as Carpenter and Lucas and those guys, these film nerds growing up. And he in particular was a fan of Howard Hawks, who was kind of revolutionary for having overlapping dialogue in his movies and having this more kind of realistic sense of how people actually talk. And so he added another layer to that with the music. So he has them yelling over each other and then also layers music over that.
Yeah, it works really nicely. But Trash takes off her clothes and she dances on the gravestone and the group hoots and hollers. And basically they're all just reveling in their youth. It's a good moment for them to really I think that moment really just kind of sums them up as a group.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's become this legendary scene it's hard to talk about this scene without sounding disgusting, but it's a great scene. And it does have that wonderful 80s horror energy to it where, okay, this is just happening. We're going this far and movies are allowed to be this exploitative.
Yeah.
It's very unique to this time, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Now Bert has arrived. And as we said, in order to protect his business, he says, we're just going to cover this up, of course. And he delegates destruction of the evidence to Frank and Freddie. I thought this was so funny that when they called him to be like, what should we do? And then he's like, okay, you do this and you do this. And I'm going to
just stand back, supervise. Yeah.
That to me is Very accurate.
This is why he's a leader.
Yeah.
This is also the start too of like when Frank gets told that he's going to be the one destroying the body. This is where we get the start of James Cameron's wonderful panicking.
Oh my God,
so good.
Howling that he does is just incredible. He is wailing. It
is chilling, and there's a great quote from the commentary at one point. I don't remember where in the movie it was. One of the times where he is just like he's just crying and yelling, "Oh Jesus!" And Dana Banish goes, "Oh, Jimmy Caron firing on both cylinders." Like that's a perfect way to describe it. Yeah,
because the door bursts open as they're getting ready to open it, and the zombie comes out and he's attacking them, and it's chaos. You have James Caron just screaming at the top of his lungs. You have Bert trying to be like, hold him down so I can freaking hit him with this thing.
Yeah, you have the zombie saying brains in a way you can't exactly identify yet, but it just sounds like screaming. But if you listen, he actually is saying, he says it once or twice there. It's the first time you hear it.
Bert pickaxes his head, but it's still alive, which is brutal. And this is where one of the big distinguishers from the Romero zombies kind of comes into play, which is that it's not enough to just destroy the brain or whatever. That doesn't take them down. You have to destroy them completely.
Yes, every piece is still alive, no matter how much you cut it up and separate it. Like it's still going to attack you. Right. And I just also want to say there's such a great moment of like special effects there too, with the pickaxe going into the brain and then the sawing of the head off. It's very visceral. Yes. Much more visceral than I think some of the Romero movies are sometimes. Whereas I love the Romero movies, particularly Day of the Dead, and those are visceral and bloody and gory, but there's still something to the weird surreality of this one where it's a little unrealistic.
Yeah.
You have like the weird coloration of the skin and the gargling noise, the weird distortion of the voice. It's disturbing in its own way, the gore and the death in this.
Yeah, I totally agree. Another part of it is that this is a human activity. And in the Romero movies, almost the entirety of the gore and the violence is zombie on human violence. And this is something that the humans are being very deliberate about doing. So, I agree that it is very visceral. And I also love that they're like griping about the movie lying to them as they're tying it down.
In a line I think might have been improvised by Tom Matthews, they talk about how they allowed Tom Matthews in particular to like really improvise and kind of just, do his own thing if he felt like there was something to do there. I think a lot of the actors given that freedom, but him in particular, they were impressed with. And I think that line may have been improvised on the spot.
Well, you did a great job, Tom, because it's very funny.
Oh, yeah. He sounds so personally betrayed. Like, wait a minute. Movies lie to us? You can just do that?
Bullshit. That's bullshit, folks. But they're going to enlist Ernie at the crematorium across the street to help destroy it because they have settled on it needs to be completely taken apart. 9:16, we're back at the cemetery. Trash is humping Suicide's leg while he complains about being misunderstood, which is a very funny moment as well.
Yeah, we get a little more depth to Suicide here. We get him as a little like kind of...
He's got something to say.
His little like Shakespearean soliloquy here,
Tina spies Freddy helping take the body over to the crematorium, and Ernie has his headphones on. So he's spooked by Bert, but is open to the idea of helping him out. They initially tell him that it's rabid weasels, but he rightfully says, hey, man, you can't just burn animals alive.
Everything about this movie it's so difficult to talk about this without stopping every few minutes. There's a rave about a new character being introduced. But Don Calfa as Ernie is so good. I mean, in a movie that it didn't need a breath of fresh air, this movie, but then you realize, oh, there's fresher air with Don Calfa. Like, oh my God, we didn't know we can get better than Bert and Frank and the rest of the punks and everybody. But here's another character that's just line after line is such a great delivery. And, he's so natural in this role.
It's incredible. He says that he'll put them down first and just whips a gun out of nowhere. This is, of course, a Luger, one of many indicators that he may, in fact, be a Nazi in hiding.
He's listening to like Germanic music, and then he's got a picture of Eva Braun on his wall.
Of course.
He breaks out into German at one point.
Right. When he says the rain is coming down like a drunken soldier, but he says it in German.
O'Bannon says too, they intentionally designed, he specifically said when they were designing the doors of the crematorium of the furnace to make it look like Auschwitz.
Oh my gosh.
This is all deliberate.
Wow. Well, mission accomplished. It comes across. And it's funny when you're like, is this guy a Nazi?
It's just one of those things. The movie does not need a secret Nazi subplot, but it's there and it's very funny.
They reveal the true nature of the wriggling bags to Ernie here. And he says that he'll help out, but he needs something in return, although he's unspecific at that time. And in fact, throughout the entirety of the movie. So, he does. I mean, he kind of alludes back to this, yes, but we never get an idea of what it might have been had this not shook out the way it did, which based on his Nazi past, I'm a little concerned about what about what that favor might have been.
Yeah, it could be a pretty complicated favor down the road.
They burn the body and the smoke raises up into the clouds, which promptly starts raining down the infected ash all over the cemetery. The punks are in and the synths kick in. Amazing, by the way, when these synths really kick in here. Fun
this
moment.
Is another case of this movie to me more than any other. I know pacing in a movie is sometimes hard to identify or talk about, but with this film, I really feel that every scene ramps up its pacing until its inevitable ending. Yeah, because it just is revealing layer after layer of this is how new rules. This is how zombies work now. No. Exactly. Everything. Every scene just adds a new layer to it of okay, now we're ramping up the tension and the helplessness even more. You can't destroy their brains. You can't cut their heads off. You can't burn them. Yeah. And then we learn more and more about this. We still have a lot to learn about these zombies and how they operate. So and every scene, I think, is adding a new element to it. It's such a wonderful case of it never slows down. It always is picking up more speed in some way.
Right. They have established all the players and now the reveal comes and it's just slowly pulling away the curtain from the inevitable death of these characters.
Yes. Yeah. And it's also where we get the start of just the rest of the movie. Has this constant downpour of this rain, and it adds such a haunting atmosphere to the whole thing too. On top of it being, like we said, a very theatrical experience, like that rain coming down at sight. It's it does kind of feel like a weird background effect in a theater, like you would hear, rain
shaking the aluminum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but it does add a real element of this really dark aesthetic to this movie. This has such an identifiable aesthetic to it. There's not many movies where you say Return of the Living Dead. You can just say the title and you get all these colors and sounds and images in your mind that perfectly fit this.
Yeah, I agree. It is very unique in that way, especially for a zombie movie, I should say. The punks all run for the car, but they complain about their skin burning from the rain, which is very creepy in and of itself. And there's this amazing zoom in on the oven as it continues to just pump out this smoke. That, I think, is my favorite shot in this whole movie in terms of the way that the actual camera is executing. As they zoom in on that oven, it's just so intimidating and what's coming, but no one else does. It's just a really great moment.
It's got this element of evil to it. Yeah. Absolutely. It is pumping out this toxic, death. It is. Right. Yeah. It's very creepy. And again, this is a set constructed in a warehouse and it looks amazing. And it's just what they pulled off last minute. They talk about how this set in particular, they were really pushed for time on this. And the metal slab that they put the bags on and burn things on, it was the wrong type of metal. Oh, man. And it started to melt and sag.
Oh, no.
During filming. Yeah. And it's a testament, too, I think, to how great the editing in this is. We just had that great montage with the rain coming down and everything. And it being a very cheap production, and very rushed, I have to imagine what we're seeing is there's a lot of footage that does not look very good because they were pressed for time.
They used every frame of this movie. That
absolutely. Yeah. And it's so tightly shot and put together.
It is also it's less than 90 minutes, right?
Yeah. It's incredibly efficient. Yeah.
And as you say, the rain is continuing to pour down and we see it seep into the coffins outside. I also love the slowly increasing ghoul makeup on Freddie and Frank.
I've always loved this makeup, and this is the thing. O'Bannon, he goes back to the makeup so many times in the commentary. It's very, very clear that he truly cared about this and really wanted to get it right, and it shows on their makeup as they start to. It's the clamminess of them that gets me, the wetness of their skin. Yeah, it's so visceral, and again, the performances by Karen and Tom Matthews, they really sell it. Just the pain of dying. It's really freaky.
They are looking and feeling like shit.
Oh yeah, and it comes through.
Yeah.
The color of their tongues when they stick them out. Oh man, yeah.
It's grody. And Ernie calls an ambulance because they're fucking dying.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Tina is exploring the warehouse looking for Freddy when she discovers that the zombie that was in the case has fully returned to life as the iconic Tar Man. Really incredible design, the effects on the voice and everything.
Execution, yeah. I mean, he is the secret to this movie's success, is pulling off this zombie.
Alan Troutman is the actor
performer
and puppeteer who was in there.
It's truly incredible what they pull off here. I know we're also both huge kaiju fans. You've talked about it a lot on the show. You've brought it up with other guests. I'm also a huge fan of kaiju. This has the same element to me of, you know how it's done. You know it's a guy in a suit with puppets and stuff, but there's still just a fascination to it watching it move. Like any good Godzilla performer,
yeah,
you're going to not see a man in a suit for a moment. You're going to believe this is Godzilla on screen, or this is the Tar Man on screen, and you just buy it. It's in its own world of reality of that's no longer a guy in a suit. That is Tar Man, or that is Godzilla, that is King Kong, whatever.
Yeah. His big sweeping movements are really like unsettling, and it's just done so well.
He doesn't move like anything you've seen on screen. It has its own life to it, has its own energy to it. And I think the very first shot of him coming out of the shadows is an older like design for him, and then he got redesigned by the new effects guys, what you see in all the wider shots.
Yeah.
But even having that shift in his appearance between shots, it adds something odd to him, something surreal.
Yeah, absolutely. This is also a very fun moment where we finally get a payoff for the step.
Yes,
which has been mentioned and squeaking the entire time. And when Tina runs back upstairs to escape the Tar Man, she in fact crashes right through that step, and the zombie comes for her and she has to hide in the locker. This is a very scary moment for me, because not only is it frightening to be stuck in a small room with a zombie, but also
claustrophobic. Yeah.
But also for him to be smart enough to grab chains and use them for leverage on the door handles. Like,
oh yeah, you can't underestimate Tar Man. Yeah,
oh, you know my gosh.
I mean, he presumably came from that VA hospital. He's a veteran. He's got some kind of,
he's
training.
From the Army Corps of Engineers himself, damn it.
Yeah.
I'm curious to get your opinion on sort of your sweet spot for zombies, and if this is it in terms of speed and intelligence, because for me, this is unique and interesting enough.
Yeah.
Because, this, don't get me wrong, I have talked about how I love Day of the Dead in particular.
Yes.
I think that there's a very interesting aspect of them, like maybe being able to use tools, but there's like their brain functions are diminished. And so they have to kind of relearn it. But this is so much scarier to me.
Yeah. I mean, it's tough. I want to say that this is my preference because it is my favorite zombie movie. Mm-hmm. But in particular, if I'm taking this out of the equation, because I feel like I have to, or it's like, even
hit me with it. What's the real deal?
Anything else? I do love shambling zombies, but I also love it's very tough. I love zombies being able to express themselves. I think is maybe my sweet spot. Maybe that's it. And this movie, they're able to speak and they're able to move and set traps and do interesting things. Yeah. In Day of the Dead, Bob is able to regain some sort of his semblance. Identity. Yeah. I love zombies that are able to express themselves. I think the speed and all the other things don't particularly matter as long as I feel like the zombies have some sort of personality to them, or they serve some kind of function of, what the movie's talking about. Another recent favorite I have is Train to Busan. And the creepiest moment of that movie to me is near the very end. I mean, I'm sorry, spoilers for...
Hey, we already talked about it on this show, so...
Oh, there you go. Yeah, listen to that episode. There you go. But near the end, when the boss is turning into a zombie, the CEO guy's turning into a zombie, he still has that little bit of humanity left to speak and kind of beg forgiveness. It's so creepy and disturbing to me to have a corpse speaking. You know what? My purpose for zombies is like, I just want them to be corpses not doing what corpses are supposed to do. All it's scary.
Fair enough. For me, the scariest part of that movie is at the very beginning when that contortionist is contorting, and it's real fucked up.
That is rough too. Yeah.
I do agree though. I am a shambler. kind of guy.
Yeah.
You know, I like 28 Days Later, but I just think that there is something to be said about the threat being so deliberately zombies. You know,
Yes.
anyone can run after me in real life, but
Right.
the horde nature of this slow, shambling death pursuing you, to me, that's what zombies really, when they're at their best.
I think the running zombies have their place.
Yes.
They're a different vibe for sure. And they're far more aggressive, which can work to a movie's benefit. I think like the Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead, running aggressive zombies fit with Zack Snyder's style. And so I think it works great in that movie. Yeah, for that one, I wouldn't want shambling. That's just not Zack's speed.
Sure.
Yeah.
It would be a very different movie.
Yeah.
Okay. I did also mention there's some weird voice thing going on with Tarman. I don't know if it's like double tracked or if they it feels double tracked. There's also some kind of fry going on there.
There's a lot I could say about the sound of this movie. There's actually two different versions of it with two different soundtracks.
Wow.
And I mean, I'm talking about completely different soundtracks. Like the music's mixed differently. I think the more common version of this movie that might be in HBO is the altered version that has a different Tarman voice than what it was originally.
Right.
There are certain the Blu-ray I have is from Shout Factory, and I think that has the original audio version on it. That has all the original songs, and then it has the original Tarman voice. I think one other zombie voice has changed later too. O'Bannon kind of went back and did like a Lucas on this and remixed the audio and went back on his decision to kind of drown out the dialogue as much as he did before. So if you're a purist and an obsessive like me, that Shout Factory version has the original audio in it. It's
there you go.
The one I prefer.
There you go. That's the real deal, folks. The rest of the punks come in to get out of the rain and find Tina and Freddy, but instead discover Tina and Tarman, who promptly chows down on Suicide's head.
Oh yeah, he's so excited. I love his joy and the way he says brains at that moment.
He's thrilled.
Yeah,
he's so happy, guys. They barricade the door and they run back for the cemetery where they find the corpses beginning to reanimate. This moment where it pans up the skeleton and his eyes open just as the music starts up with, "Do you want to party?"
Again, this movie is my dream aesthetic. It's like everything I want. It's scary and it's weird and it's stupid and it's silly and just wants to party. That sums it up.
Party time, folks.
Yeah, it's party time.
The EMTs have also arrived, and like I said, Freddie and Frank have seen better days, to put it mildly. They're shivering, completely gaunt, yellow tongues, unresponsive pupils, no pulse, reflexes, blood pressure of 0 over 0, and perhaps most importantly, their room temperature.
I love this too. This is just another example of the punk element of this movie. It's just like they even lay out like, okay, these are the rules for being alive. You don't fit any of these. We're breaking all the rules.
Like, you're dead. And they're like, what? And he's like, well, I mean, you're talking, so you're not dead, but you're dead.
Yeah. It's great. I love these two paramedics and the way they handle it so professionally too. It's just like, they're not freaking out about this. Like, these are the most calm people we've met this entire movie. And they're meeting two like literal corpses that are speaking to them.
Yeah, it's incredible. This is, however, interrupted by the arrival of some of the punks. Trash's nightmare fantasy unfortunately came true, and she was quickly devoured as the zombies rose up, but the rest have fled. Spider, Tina, and Scuzz have made it to Group A, which is these people here with the EMTs, but Chuck and Casey are still out there, pursued by zombies back into the medical supply place. The EMTs head for their ambulance, but are quickly taken down themselves. I love the moment where he turns on the headlights and there's just that swarm of them out there. Oh man, that's another really great moment.
Yeah. Again, a packed frame of details. You know, there's a lot to, it's awesome. You see like there's the real great depth to it. You might think there's either like 10 zombies or hundreds of zombies. You can't tell. It's great.
Yeah. And I think that part of what makes that moment really stand out to me is that we talked about how funny this movie is. But there are moments that are genuinely unnerving to me.
Yes.
And I think that
chills.
This is one of those moments where, you know, there is some tension. It is obviously a 1985 movie. And so depending on what you're used to, you might have to buy in a little more. But I think that if you're able to get into the world, that there are moments in this that will really be like, oh, shit.
Yeah, based on what they set up. Exactly. We now learned how durable these zombies are, that you can't kill them, how bloodthirsty and violent they are. And then now we have a swarm of them. It like ups the ante so well after it teaches you how things work.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, and it still has things to teach you about how they work too.
Yeah. Ernie goes to check on them and he discovers the horde eating these EMTs, which they then pursue him.
Mm-hmm.
They start barricading as the chaos breaks out. I love when they head to the chapel and the text above the door says, "Beyond this fleeting day, the rest from which no man wakes," which is,
oh yes,
that's a classic.
I don't know if we mentioned the name of the cemetery. It's Resurrection.
Oh yeah,
Cemetery.
of course.
Yeah.
Which that's weird. That's a weird name.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're kind of asking for it.
Back outside, one of the zombies that is cogent enough to talk, he calls into the dispatch, or he talks back to them because they call first, and he says, "Send more paramedics." And it's so funny. It's so fucked up.
Yeah, this is one of the moments. Again, one of the moments where I'm watching this, and every time I think this might be my favorite movie. Is this moment here. It's such a great, creepy reveal that they have this level of cognizance, like you said, where they're acting. He's now like acting. They're now pulling tricks on people to get more brains. It's wonderful. And it's such a great reveal of like, again, every scene is giving you more of what they can do and the level they go and how hopeless everything is.
Yeah.
You know, because of course, you would send more paramedics if you hear that call. Like,
it is great. I really love that moment. And it's another distinguishing factor where this is the first time that they've communicated in a way that is like a full sentence, where even if you picked up on the brains thing before, you know, that could just be like a guttural, like instinctual thing. But for him to be like, I understand that
there's thoughts and reasoning going on here. Yes. Yeah.
That's the good shit. That's what I'm loving about this movie for sure. The barricade starts to come down, and while they repair it, Scuzz gets freaking chomped on. The good news is, though, that they deleg the zombie lady who was chewing on his brain so they can ask it some questions. Mm-hmm. First of all, very fun animatronic here. I assume it was an animatronic.
It's like a puppet operated from beneath the table.
Sure.
I believe is what William Stout said. Yeah.
That also sounds right.
You see that moment, there's just like that great fountain of blood when Scuzz gets chomped on. It is violent.
Yeah.
And it really paints that wall there. It's great.
It is. I also, speaking of the eye kickers, the little like leaking spinal fluid is such a great little one. I did not notice that for the longest time.
I didn't notice it until I got this great book called The Complete History of the Return of the Living Dead, and it covers all 4 movies in the franchise, but they spend the most time on the first one. And I didn't know about it until I was reading about that scene in the book, and it describes how you can see the spinal fluids drip out. It's like, oh yeah, now every time since I have to make sure to catch it. Yeah.
It's gross. It's really gross to just see like that clear liquid like pooling at the bottom there. But she reveals that being dead is agonizing, that they can feel themselves rotting, which is the most existentially terrifying thing I can possibly imagine.
Oh, yes. Again, this is the reason that this movie speaks to me particularly. Like, this is exactly my worldview. This is, things are this horrible and bad all the time, but hey, it's also life's a party, you know? That's how you sum this movie up, is that line is horrifying and just philosophically scary.
Yeah.
That the dead are hurting all the time. And you think about Tarman in that drum for 14 years being conscious and feeling pain, feeling himself rot. And I need some brains too, if I was in that position.
Yeah. When you tell someone that they deserve to be locked up in a can for 14 years, they're going to act like it. But yeah, she reveals that eating brains is what makes the pain stop temporarily, but it does. Meanwhile, the rain continues, bringing the muddy corpse of trash up from the dirt. Although this is also one of the areas where I find it a very interesting distinction from the Romero ones, in that only the chemical makes more zombies, not just death or even zombie bites.
Right, because suicide doesn't come back.
Right.
Yeah, but all the cops who get killed outside do, because they're in the rain, I have to presume.
Right. And I think that is one, a great way to handle it, just in general, from like a story perspective. But 2, it helps to keep it manageable. This helps to make it feel like if they can get this taken care of, maybe there's a way out.
To contain things. Yeah.
Right. And that is not always the case. You don't always get that feeling in other zombie movies where it's just like, well, in the Romero ones where it's just when you die, you come back. Right. No wonder it gets to the point of Day of the Dead where they're just like, what the fuck are we even doing here? They're gonna overtake us.
Yeah.
So just another great distinction for this movie.
Yeah, definitely. And it also goes to, I mean, there's enough like lore and rules for this movie to imply like a larger world.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like it's a great piece of little bit of like world building, and it's like kind of setting, okay, these are the boundaries of this world and these are the rules. And I think it adds to this movie feeling like, I mean, there's obviously there's a lot of sequels to this, or a few sequels to this, and there was more to be kind of explored in this world. And I totally feel that in this movie. It's like inviting you to kind of think more about, well, we have this story of the last time the barrels leaked out. We have other barrels. We have other,
sure. Where else did they send it?
This? Yeah,
exactly. Mm-hmm. Trash quickly chows down on a nearby homeless man while the gang locks Frank and Freddy in the chapel as they scream in agony from the rigor mortis.
Oh, yeah.
When they reveal the like bruises on his back, that's another grody moment.
It's disgusting. And again, Tom Matthews really selling the pain there. When you're in that much agony, like it rings as true. Like you've had those moments of pain where it's like you just can't help but cry out. And this is what it feels like. And it's so believable. I don't hear that level of like of realism in movies that often.
Yeah. And Tina does stay with them, refusing to leave Freddy, although those two finally perish all the way. And Frank escapes while Freddy tries to eat her, and she pounds on the door to be let out.
Another great little acting moment when Tom Matthews rolls his eyes back in his head as he like passes away and finally dies and then becomes zombified.
Yeah. They see some cops looking for ambulances that got the ambulance EMT drivers who've been devoured. And the zombies radio for more of them as well. This is another one of those like play on words that I really enjoyed when the cops threaten to blow their brains out. Which, like that's just a fun choice of words for them.
There was some weird fact in the commentary that William Stout brought up that when he says we got a man down over here, apparently that actor is an actual cop that they called in to play this role.
Oh, wow.
And man down was new lingo at that time. So this was like one of the first times it was said, or maybe the first time it was said in the movie. Yeah, you don't think about weird stuff like that, but I mean, hey, this is what William Stout claims. I don't know how.
Hell yeah. Well, this is the kind of detail you're only going to get on the best little horror house in Philly, folks. And I guess the Weekly Podcast Massacre.
No. This is a little horror house exclusive.
Wow.
I won't bring it up there.
Exclusive.
Don't worry. Yeah.
Eddie has a broken foot now, so he can't run. But Spider and Bert, I don't know why he wrote Snake so much. Spider and Bert make a break for the cop car. They get to it, but they can't go back for the other two because they're swarmed by zombies. And so Bert says we're gonna fuck off, but they can't get down the road either because that's blocked by a horde.
Yeah.
So they go.
I love this pairing of Bert and Spider. It's such a, you don't ever think of these two guys together, but once they get together, they are great together. I love them as a duo. Yeah, they really get stuff done.
It is very funny, especially because like it is kind of like an interesting odd couple setup to be like. Well, you've got this like old ass businessman here who's been like, oh, we just gotta take care of my old savings and all. And then you have this punk who has been hanging out in a graveyard the whole time. It does
stick around, just aimlessly. Yeah,
it does work very well together. I like it a lot.
Yeah,
but they go for the warehouse and they accidentally burst right through a wall, and they find Chuck and Casey in there. Meanwhile, Ernie and Tina have holed up in the roof of the crematorium, pursued by a blinded Freddy after they threw acid in his face. Frank, however, crawls his butt into the oven. Pretty grim, but also good dude to sacrifice himself instead of hurting
very
people.
Touching. He takes off his wedding ring and he says goodbye to the wife that he called earlier.
Yeah.
It is kind of just like very sweet reveal. Like, oh, he actually did like love his wife.
Yeah.
And he's doing this for her. Yeah.
So true. It's a nice moment for old Frank.
Wonderful song on the soundtrack there by Roky Erickson. I really love that song in that moment. It's such a great, just little, when he starts to kneel down and the beat hits, you hear that synth come in. It's wonderful. The
group of kids and Bert are going to venture into the basement despite the threat of Tarman so that they can tell the cops that they're there. And Bert absolutely knocks his fucking block off.
Oh, yeah.
As they open the door. which is so funny to me that this whole time we've been like, oh, fuck, Tarman's down there. You got to watch out for Tarman. And then they open the door and just fucking knock his head off.
Oh, you can't fuck with Clue, man. He's so great. I love him in this. I saw this at a screening in 2019 at the New Beverly here in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And Clue is a regular at the New Beverly, which is why he has a cameo in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, because Tarantino knows him from his theater all the time. But he was there at the screening and he gave a little like speech before it. It was a double feature of this and Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, which he's also in. And he was kind of saying like, I was always kind of so proud of this movie's legacy. And, it was kind of a tough time making it. But the fan response has been great. He talked about how he loved working in horror movies because they were the only movies that would employ him at this time. He's like, yeah, you guys were paying me. And like, you get the, horror directors are often very nice, very fun people. And so, yeah, he's a big horror fan himself, it seems like.
Awesome. Well, he does a great job in this. And I am glad that he was having trouble finding work, because otherwise we wouldn't get this performance. So take that, Clue. But so they go in there and he calls the number on the side of the tank, and it goes up the Army chain of command, which leads to the implementation of their contingency plan, which is blow their asses up.
Yeah.
So 5 a.m. of Independence Day, 20 square blocks of Louisville are leveled with about 4,000 dead.
Only 4,000 dead.
Only 4,000 dead. Yeah, that's right.
As we get a montage of like the fallout and all the chaos this results in, and the screams and the sounds of the dead rising.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah. And of course, it's a great setup to be like, don't worry about the fires. The rain is still going and it'll put it out. Problem solved.
And the president is visiting later.
Right.
The president's going to go visit this recently nuked city.
Sure,
yeah.
It won't be overrun by zombies, right?
Yeah, it is very interesting that they didn't use that setup as like a sequel idea. I would have loved to see
really good setup,
like a satirical thing of the president becomes a zombie.
Oh, man, that would have been really good.
But great.
The movie does end with one last look at the skeleton bursting through his grave. And do you want a party? Kicks off one last time. A wonderful and bleak ending to a fantastic, fantastic zombie movie. Yeah. I have not seen the sequels.
I have seen Return of the Living Dead Part 2. I love this one so much, and that one upset me so much that I never bothered to watch the rest of them. Although I do know people do really defend the third one, I think, which is Rave from the Grave, I think is what it's called. And based on the synopsis of it, it does sound like a very interesting idea, and it sounds more in line with this one than the sequel was. The sequel was similar in a lot of ways, including having Tom Matthews and James Cameron in very similar roles.
Wow.
They are the only returning actors, but they're playing completely different characters. But it just has none of that same magic. Where yeah, exactly. Yes. I don't remember if William Stout came back, but it is probably, if I watch it again, probably fun on its own as a low budget 80s zombie comedy. But it's not the same as this, in that in this movie, all the comedy is not undercutting the horror or the suspense at all.
Right.
The jokes are never that people are reacting genuinely to these situations, but their reactions are still funny, even though it's like actual terror that they're depicting. There's still something funny about it, the whole thing. But in the sequel, all the jokes totally like strip away the suspense and the horror aspect of it, and it's just a silly comedy. Like, you have the dead cracking jokes and making puns and things like that, as opposed to this, where the dead, they're strange and they're very weird, and there is a funniness to yelling out brains and the way they talk and everything, but they are still very scary to experience.
Yeah, and they're not like telling jokes.
Right, exactly. No, the movie takes them seriously, but there's still comedy in it somehow. Right. And it's like I said earlier, where it's the same breath. It's not scare then joke, it's scare and joke all in the same package.
So true. And Greg, I think that is a great segue into describing why this is not just a good horror movie, but is in fact the best horror movie ever made. And I'm going to let you start.
Sure. I think Return of the Living Dead is the best horror movie ever made, because it is such a unique and uncommon movie, not only in the zombie subgenre, but in horror and in all movies and cinema in general. I just really can't think of any other movies that play with meta-ness and comedy and nihilism and low budget craft and really smart directing and editing. Great performances across the board. Just the way that it ramps up the tension, doesn't lose speed, and it has this confidence about it where even at the very end, it just replays a montage of like greatest hits from the movie.
Yeah.
It knows right away, you're going to want to see these again.
No.
And it shows you. So you get more in the credits of Tarman saying brains. You get like, a lot of great jokes and audio clips played. This movie just has this confidence and this brashness about it that I love. It's what I love about punk. It's what I love about horror. It's what I love about movies. It's what I love about art, that people can be this brash and this expressive and creative with so little and make something so unique and so out of the box.
Yeah, I totally agree. And to me, this is the best horror movie ever made, because ever since rewatching Manhunter, I have been on a real reject realism, embrace expressionism kind of kick. And I think that this is like the zombie equivalent of doing that. This is fully embracing the aesthetic of punk, melding it with zombies, and creating something that is still wholly unique. It is its own thing. I have personally never seen anything accomplish what Return of the Living Dead does. And I think that the fact that it has this unique look while also having some truly, truly funny performances and some scares. I'm going to say it, some scares.
Yeah.
And I think that, all of this comes together to create a great movie. And then when you look at all of the like contextual information that had to shake out in such a weird way in order to make this thing even possible, it feels like a wonderful fluke that we got it. And we've talked about sort of this like optimistic nihilism that's in it. And I think you said, nothing matters, let's party. That it sums it up great. And I think that it is a pretty healthy attitude.
Yeah. It's real. I mean, 100% rejecting realism, but at the same time, it's being realistic in its view of death. Like you can't fight against it. You'll never overcome it. All of our characters are people who in some way should have an understanding of how death works. Mm-hmm. But you come to learn in this movie, oh no, we don't know anything. It's unknowable and we can't overcome it no matter how much you know about rigor mortis and, all these things. Like we don't know what it's like. And it's a scary concept that is perfectly encapsulated in this movie. And yet somehow being that depressing, it is hilarious and it gets you over it too.
Yes, I totally agree. Greg, this was so much fun, man. I love this movie. I love talking movies with you. Please tell people where they can listen to you talk more movies.
Yeah, so you can listen to me talk more movies on the Weekly Podcast Massacre, which I do with my friends Murph and our friend Kill. And you can find it on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on Google Podcasts, all those regular places. We've got 3 episodes out now. Most recent one was the Canadian horror film Slacks from this year. It's just the 3 of us talking about movies and breaking them down using very niche subgenres and themes and talking about, very things unique to horror movies, I'd say. Yeah. And we got a lot of fun stuff coming up. Like I said, Assimilation August just around the corner.
Very much looking forward to that. You got a Twitter account, right?
Yeah. We're at Weekly Massacre on Twitter and Instagram.
There you go. Check that out, folks. As far as my plugs, you can find me on Twitter at Little Horror PHL. Like I said, we got the Patreon, which has all kinds of bonus episodes, including stuff like EC Comics and its history and all that stuff, which is a very fun episode with Andy Neese from Hollywood Handbook. You might know him from.
Oh, great.
Yeah, I mean, you know, all the jazz, folks. Rate and review if you're enjoying it. Whatever. Who cares? Just listen to the podcast. That's all I ask.
So I want to say, George, too, I'm a regular listener and I love the show. It's wonderful. And it's an honor to be back on it for a second time. I really appreciate having me back and
my pleasure.
Inspiring me to get into podcasting myself. Also, I don't think I would be doing it without you. So.
Well, that means a lot. And I am happy to have you for my friend, because this is we've talked about all the stuff that we have in common. And this is just a great excuse to talk movies, man.
Definitely.
So,
yeah.
I mean, that's it. Check out Weekly Podcast Massacre. It's great. Bye.
Bye.